Welcome to the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. The Golden Knights are on the ice at City National Arena. Here we are in day 3 of 2020-2021 training camp, brought to you by Martin Harris Construction. Welcome, everybody. Dan D'Uva here alongside Mike McKenna. Thanks for joining us. Hockey is a week away. The NHL season starts in just 7 days. The Golden Knights regular season a day later. Mike McKenna, how are you?
Well, I feel fantastic, Dan. Can you believe we're sitting on the set talking about hockey? Season is right around the corner. What a feeling.
This is great. We're going to be with you all morning as the Golden Knights will be on the ice. Practice is scheduled to begin officially here at about 10:15. As you could see just a moment ago, the guys are on the ice getting ready for the formal skate. Then there will be a cut of the ice, and then at about 11:15, not 11:07, as Mark Stone told us yesterday, but 11:15, they're planned to be another scrimmage, and that'll last until about 12 noon. And that's the plan for the show today, plus a lot of conversation with Mike and me and you. We're broadcasting on every video stream that you can come up with. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, you name it, we're there. And, of course, on the .com as well. That means that you can ask us questions, too. We've got Gordon Weigers working behind the scenes, producing along with Jenna and Andrew. We've got a whole crew behind the scenes making sure that we bring you the show today, and they'll make sure that your questions get to us. Now, we have lots of Golden Knights questions to get you here today. But, Mike, we ought to start with a topic that I'm not sure we planned on discussing, but there was a hockey game last night. And unlike most World Junior Championships, the NHL is not having any games in this stage of January. So the World Junior Championship was the only hockey game in the world last night. Canada, United States. I think it's a good thing that 2 Americans are sitting here today because the United States defeated Canada 2-0 in a shutout.
Well, there was consternation in the offices this morning. As soon as we walked in, the Canadian veteran of the VGK crew, they couldn't believe it. They were in a full discussion trying to figure out what had gone wrong. How could USA have possibly done this? Well, it's because the U.S. team's better, obviously, Dan, right? You know, a 2-0 shutout. But on the heels of Spencer Knight, the goaltender, who had an outstanding performance. But it was a lot of fun. You know, all eyes were on the young players, most of them being 18, 19, 20 years old. It was a great performance. It was a lot of fun to watch, too, wasn't it?
Yes. It was tense. It was unexpected. I've got to ask first about the few Golden Knights prospects who were involved last night, but there are a couple of other notable young players who the Golden Knights could be seeing in very short order. We'll get to that in a moment, but obviously with Peyton Krebs and Caden Korczak on the losing side for Canada, but Brendan Brisson with a gold medal. He played about 7 minutes in the game last night. Just to think about that experience, to be on the winning side. He's talked about, because of his father's occupation, being at the American Championship last time. He was about 15 years old, and now, just a few years later, to be a part of it.
Well, you really carry that experience throughout your career. You know, I was never lucky enough to play World Juniors. This is the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
You know, to just make that team is a huge step. To be part of a winning team and to get that experience is huge. And you carry the momentum with you. You know, when you go back to whether it's your college team or your major junior team, you take it and it goes through all your teammates, and it gives you that taste of the big stage. You can never get enough experience playing big games. A final game for a gold medal, a game 7 for a championship. Whether you play 7 minutes, whether you play 27 minutes, it makes a huge difference in a young player's career.
You can see the emotion. There's an exuberance for these guys.
You can hear it, too.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are teenagers, which is not to say when a team wins the Stanley Cup, there's not elation. But there's something a little bit less jaded about guys who are playing for their country, guys who are have yet to enter the professional ranks. They're not getting paid to be there, and they're teenagers.
Yeah.
And there's that rawness to the celebration in an empty arena in Edmonton, by the way. To see that, and obviously the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat for the Canadian players, but it's amazing to see that emotion.
The word that always comes to mind with me is pure. Yeah. You know, there's obviously circumstances that are weighing on the players. They want to have a great showing for the NHL clubs, for their future. But what it really comes down to, Dan, is they're playing for the crest, for that jersey, for their country. That's a special feeling, and not many people get the opportunity to do so. You win a gold medal for your country, that's forever. You can't take that away from somebody. And it's just one of those things that when you look at the checklist of a professional hockey player, of any player, Stanley Cup, gold medals, Olympics, World Juniors, those are always highlights, and they're fun moments that people look back on and always remember as being a highlight.
Now, we'll get to this a little bit later on when we go through the Golden Knights schedule, but it's also pointing out Trevor Zegras, Ducks first-round pick, Boston University, the comments before the game saying that Canada hasn't played a real competitive team. No disrespect to the other teams, but he didn't think the other countries were up to snuff compared to the United States. I'm not saying it's a Joe Namath guarantee or a Mark Messier guarantee, but not only does he say all of that right before the game, you don't normally hear those things anymore, but then he delivers. He scores a critical goal.
The good part is that it was a real moment of honesty. A lot of times,
yes,
you know how players work, Dan. We come in, we hedge. Well, it's a very good opponent. We're going to have to play our best game. That was a very real analysis that he gave, and he was honest in the moment, and yes, he backed it up. So was he calling a shot? Maybe to a certain extent, but that's a player who was outstanding the entire tournament. He backed up his words, but I think it just spoke to the confidence that the U.S. team had. They had played together and played strong in the tournament. They knew that they could play well against the Canadians, but they were carrying some momentum and some swagger into that game, and that's tough to replicate. You could feel that confidence throughout the U.S. team.
So that's the World Junior Championship concluded last night with the United States victorious, the gold medal, defeating Canada 2-0, and we would expect at some point in the near future, as those three Golden Knights who were involved in the game yesterday, Brisson and Krebs and Korczak, will make their way to training camp. And then the questions become, how quickly can they become acclimated? And then where do they fit? Whether it's in just practices, perhaps in game action. These guys have been playing competitive games, and I wonder, Mike, if that gives them an edge, perhaps going into this bizarre scenario of the NHL beginning in January. Normally the NHL would be in mid-season form already. The players will have not played any games. These young prospects have.
It gets them into a mode of at least having battles and knowing what it's like in a game setting. As far as an edge coming into well-oiled NHL hockey players at 19 and 20 years old, it's still a steep mountain to climb. But you look at how Peyton Krebs performed in the tournament. Outstanding job. Korczak as well. The VGK prospects showed themselves very well. They will have to go through, correct me if I'm wrong, quarantine when they show up, which will delay them somewhat in getting to speed. So there is a little bit of a built-in buffer with having to do so. But you know, these guys are coming off a really, really charged emotional tournament. For sure, you take that into any time you're on the ice. And for them, a lot of their counterparts in major junior hockey, they haven't been able to play hockey.
Right.
You know, the Western Hockey League hasn't touched the ice yet. College has been all over the place. Some teams are playing, some aren't. So it had to be really good for them to get these games in over the holidays in the tournament to be ready for NHL training camp.
Watching competitive hockey the last several days, the World Junior Championships, it's only revved the engine a little bit
more. Got your juices going, didn't it, Dan?
Because the Golden Knights are going to be playing meaningful hockey games in just 8 days. Anaheim Ducks will be in town for the first 2 games of the regular season, then the Coyotes, and we'll go through the schedule in a little bit here. But I also wanted to play the other side of that coin, Mike, because there are no preseason games. There are scrimmages, but when you're playing against your teammates, obviously the Knights don't have 2 full NHL caliber rosters here. Half of this group is not going to be on an NHL roster off the start. So what does that mean going into a season if you've not had a game against an opponent?
Well, it makes your system work really be important in practice. And what the team's doing so far in training camp, they have to dial down on their systems right away. They need to do a lot of game-like scenarios during practice. That's half the reason why they're scrimmaging so much this year, is to get up to speed. But you know, Dan, I liken it to my 7-year-old's hockey situation currently. In the COVID world, they've only been allowed to play against teams within their youth hockey organization. Well, this past weekend they went out and they played in a tournament against teams from other areas. Guess what? The intensity level went like this, through the roof. They were so excited to play. That's what's going to happen with the NHL teams when they finally get to play one another. But you will see something of a helter-skelter start where systems are the hardest part to make sure that you're clicking on when it comes to game time. You know, we don't know what we're going to see with that for the first week or two, but the way things are now with video, with training, I expect the hockey to pick up right back to what we expect very quickly this season.
And that leads us to a question I wanted to pose to you, Mike, and it comes from one of you watching at home, and we thank you. Remember, you can send in those questions. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, there's so many places I lose track. You'd think with all these devices and papers, I'd be able to keep track.
We need a train list. Look at this. This is like Christmas Day for Dan over here.
Look at all the toys.
I mean,
might have embellished it a little bit with all the devices.
We've got a computer, an iPad, a mobile device.
Right.
What other technology could we?
So I'm connected. Mike is much more efficient.
This is my old standby. You know, this is for the broadcast here with the logo on the back, which so well done by Harvin in our office, helped us all out with it. But yeah, I like a nice, lean, clean approach to it, Dan.
Excellent. And again, you would think with all these devices, we'd be able to take your questions, and we will. So let's go to Carol on Twitter. This is tying in right with what we've been talking about, Mike. Carol on Twitter asks, players have said that most of them have been in Vegas skating for more than a month, and that's about right since just after Thanksgiving. And it seems like some other teams just had players arrive in the last week or so. Which is more common?
It's a bit of a mix throughout the league right now, and a lot of it relates to the quarantine that's been in effect. Like the Canadian team, some of them weren't even allowed to practice or be on the ice together until camps opened. So it's a very mixed bag depending on regionality, on state regulations. It's definitely been a plus for the Golden Knights to be able to skate together. I think this is something that was very true in the return to play this summer, that the Golden Knights were all in Vegas skating together, and they came out of the gates flying. 6 straight wins. They capitalized on that. And Pete DeBoer talked about it yesterday, how he thinks that experience in the summertime is going to really enable the team to start off properly and know what they needed to do right now in January. So I do think that this is something the Golden Knights can build off of. It is a much more of a challenge for the teams that haven't been skating together. But realistically, NHL players, wherever they choose to spend their offseason, they have access to ice. The hard part is they don't have access to their teammates necessarily. That's what the Golden Knights have had in Vegas for the last month.
You're watching the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. Pete DeBoer with his whiteboard marker. What secrets, what wisdom might he be applying to that whiteboard in front of all of those Golden Knights players? Can you see, Mike? I don't my eyes aren't that good enough.
I can tell you right now, the puck's going to the corner, and then there's going to be a net drive involved. It's so funny when you look at the whiteboard from a distance because it looks like a big jumble of color. You know, and when you're close to it, you can kind of tell what's going on. But it reminds me of the famous scene from Miracle where Herb Brooks is writing on the glass, and everybody on the team is having an impossible time figuring out what he's trying to say or diagram. And they get to the line, and everybody's looking at one another going, who's going to be first? So it takes some guts. If you're going to lead the drill off, you don't want to be the guy who's the drill wrecker, right? If you don't know what's going on, you stay at the back of the line. You let the smart guys in front lead the way.
It reminds me of a Saturday Night Live sketch with John Madden using the telestrator. A little bit of a spoof, but it seems that the players know exactly what Pete DeBoer has written on the whiteboard in that sharp blue marker, and we'll see how it goes. I wanted to follow up on this, Mike, this question from Carol on Twitter about the players having opportunity to skate here. This is a bizarre season. Last year, of course, the return to play, and we hope that for the 21-22 season, we're back to pretty much normal. In a normal offseason, NHL players, many of whom are not from the United States or even Canada, maybe Europe, they don't necessarily make their permanent home in the city they play. The Golden Knights players, it's my estimation, I don't have numbers to verify this, but it seems that more Golden Knights players have made Las Vegas in this area a year-round home. Why wouldn't you? So that there's more opportunity here, not just now, the quarantine and the pandemic seasons, but in the future, and that could be a benefit for this organization in the long haul compared to I don't know how many folks are making Columbus, Ohio their home or New York City their home if they're from Sweden, if they're from Vancouver.
Well, there's a huge benefit to. There's a reason why Vegas is a destination for players. People love to live here. There's all sorts of extraneous factors that go into it. What I found really interesting was Alex Pietrangelo saying that he doesn't have any desire to go to the Strip any longer, unless maybe it was, for a meal, which you can't hardly do now anyway. But the more players you keep in a city year-round, the more you're building your culture and keeping and retaining your culture. You see each other at the rink every day. You have outings outside of it to where you're getting to know one another even better. That chemistry always relates on the ice. It's such an attractive piece of the puzzle in Vegas that I think it's only going to grow, as you say. NHL players, inevitably, you get a long-term contract, you buy a home in a city. Why do you need to have two homes if one of them's in Vegas? Really, there isn't much unless you feel like you have to have a month at a lake in northern Canada where you have to get away from everything. You can go to the lake 20 minutes from here. You can make that happen. Everything is in Vegas that they could need.
Yeah, and every player is different considerations, family considerations, and so on. It is indicative of everything you said, the number of players who, even if not playing for the Golden Knights, still skate here, still do retain homes here. A number of guys who have played for Vegas in the first 3 seasons still have homes here. So there's something in the water, I suppose.
Well, Derek Englund, he was leading the charge, right? He liked it so much playing for the Wranglers that he made Las Vegas home, and sure enough, full circle, come back all these years later, ends up playing for the Golden Knights. But, it was already starting to happen. There was retention in Vegas of professional players, that were here with the Thunder, with the Wranglers. I only see that continuing, and Dan, I even see it going a step further. I see players who've never played in Las Vegas buying homes here and staying here and potentially making it a place to live because the access to ice is so good too. The ice doesn't go away at City National during the summer. It's here all the time. Sometimes it's difficult in other cities to find that. So it's a very attractive place for an NHL hockey player to make his home.
Lifeguard Arena, the practice facility of the incoming Henderson Silver Knights. We'll talk about the American Hockey League in a little bit. Some news there, and the Henderson Silver Knights will be participating. 3 teams did opt out of the upcoming AHL seasons. We'll talk a little bit more about Henderson and the Silver Knights in just a little bit. In the meantime, I want to offer a shout-out to those who have tuned in. VGK Worldwide. This really is a global affair, isn't it? Amazing. Thank you for tuning in wherever you happen to be. This is Training Camp brought to you by Martin Harris Construction and the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. Watching through various means worldwide, MG on YouTube from Weyburn, Saskatchewan. Brett on Facebook in Bakersfield. And hi to Scott on Facebook, a VGK Worldwide member who is tuned in from Ohio. That's great. And also Mr. KB on Twitch from England across the pond. And we are pretty sure that Mr. KB has been with us 3 days in a row. He's tuned in for all of this. So thank you. And I'm sure there are others who have been with us each of these first 3 days of camp. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah, we don't know the time. I can't figure out the time difference for myself, but I'm sure it's not 2 hours to get to England, right? So
I believe it would be about supper time. They've already had their tea. It's got to be 6:30 p.m., just after 6:30, I believe.
Thanks, Dan.
Across
you
the
are
pond.
A worldly individual, a wealth of knowledge.
I'm not sure how to respond to that, Mike. I think that was a compliment, though.
It is. Well, and what's amazing about this, Dan, is that when we did Fortress at Home during the return to play, Stormy and I would be up here on the desk, and we'd be getting all of these shout-outs from the worldwide, and it would be Czech Republic and England and Scotland, and it truly was Australia, worldwide. It's real, and it's really cool to see. So many people have adopted the Golden Knights as their team from all around the world.
I have to admit that if not for the Golden Knights in these streams, I don't believe I would be aware of the existence of Twitch. I'm not sure I would have known about it.
You're telling me you don't have your own Twitch channel when you go home?
Shh. That's a burner account. No, I am told by the powers that be that there were record numbers for the Twitch stream yesterday that featured, of course, Dave Gosher, Shane Knighty, and a cameo from recently retired Golden Knights defenseman Derek Englund. Clearly, it's Gosher who's driving the numbers.
Star power. Lots of star power.
But that's wonderful. So thank you wherever you've tuned in. But maybe you haven't checked out the Golden Knights Twitch account yet. I wouldn't have otherwise. I didn't know anything about Twitch, but now we do. So thank you. Check out that Twitch feed. It's another way to consume the Golden Knights.
So Dan's Twitch account is actually at Dan _ no, I'm kidding. He doesn't I don't think he has one, but it was a really cool day in VGK land though. I know on the Twitch stream that I think we were one of the featured channels, and next thing you know, thousands of people were watching the Golden Knights through the channel, and it's super cool. There's so many different ways to interact now and be able to stream things, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, you name it. It's so great to be able to have your favorite team right at your fingertips, a couple clicks away.
Let's zero in on what we're seeing on the ice here, Mike. We've got Pete DeBoer again with a briefer stint at the whiteboard this time. Day 3 of camp, and I know we've already disclaimed this is a different kind of training camp. Guys have been skating. There's no preseason games. With all that understood, what on day 3 of this particular training camp will Pete DeBoer be focusing upon?
Well, it looks like we're getting a whole lot of system work. Going to the whiteboard's really indicative of that. When you're getting pucks into a zone and you're having players work deep, get pucks to points, this isn't just flow drills any longer, getting your legs back underneath you. We saw that the first 2 days. The puck was in motion a lot. The players were getting their feet. They're getting the chemistry back with their line mates. Now you're seeing pucks start to go to corners. You're seeing players go to spots on the ice. You're probably going to see a little bit of power play and penalty kill mixed in, if not today, I would guess very shortly. You're hammering home on the details. This is a detailed game. If you cannot perform within a structured setting, you can't be successful. So especially with Pete DeBoer in control this year, now having his second training camp in the span of less than a year, you're going to see a lot of that work. You're going to see much more special teams, all building towards game action.
One important newsworthy note, Alex Tuch, you just saw number 89 on the ice, notably absent from the skate yesterday. Pete DeBoer cautioned us, don't worry, it's just a little soreness because of the first day of getting back on the ice. Not serious. He'll be back. Wanted to be cautious. And there he is, number 89 from Baldwinsville, New York, on the ice. Particularly notable, Mike, because Tuch, though a mainstay with the Knights for 3 seasons, has not played in any one of the first 3 opening games of the season. Year 1 was in the American League for a few days.
Played against him there.
Yeah, there you go. Scored a couple of goals.
I believe there may have been a hat trick. I could pull that up.
If
it wasn't a hat trick,
yeah.
It was definitely at least 2 goals, and I believe Shea Theodore assisted on minimum 2.
I remember watching the box score of that game while the Golden Knights were in action, and I think Alex ended up with 4 points. We digress.
With our past relationship where you're going, oh no, Mike. I bet. You did. You had sympathy. Or please tell me. I mean, Dan is a cold, soulless individual in reality, but I'm hoping at this instance you had some humility, right?
Deep down, once you peeled the layers away, I suppose that may have been the case. Dan D'Uva, Mike McKenna here for what has already been a fun broadcast on the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. By the way, today's schedule almost identical to yesterday and the day before, the first 3 days of camp. Tomorrow, we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like, so stay tuned. We might have a stream. We're not 100% sure. We know Friday is going to be off, so stay tuned. We might have an update for what the Golden Knights will be doing and what we might be able to do in terms of coverage, so stay tuned for Thursday updates, but we know Friday is a scheduled off day, back to work on Saturday. Anyhow, Alex Tuch was injured then for the start of last season and the start of the previous season. There's got to be a sense for Alex to stay healthy through the next 7 days so he can be in the lineup for Game 1 against the Ducks on the 14th, especially with how well he performed during the postseason. A lackluster regular season. Boy, did he open eyes in the postseason.
Great point, Dan. And I look at the Golden Knights, and part of me thinks that as Alex Tuch goes, so go the Golden Knights. When he's going on full tilt, when he's galloping down the right wing, when he's getting to the front of the net on the power play, when he's racking up points and goals, that's when the Golden Knights are playing their best hockey. He is an integral part of the team. Absolutely outstanding on the third line. You know he wants more. You know he'd like to play first, second line minutes, and you have to be healthy to do that. Keep in mind last season, he did battle quite a few injuries throughout the regular season. Without question in my mind, that hampered what he was able to do then. He came back into the return to play, not just healthy, but lighter too, Dan. He lost some weight. He openly said that, you know what, I feel like I'm a stride faster. This summer, he spoke about how he's continued to work with a skating coach at times to keep that stride, not just strong and top end in the NHL, but to keep working towards being one of the fastest power forwards in the NHL. So he is an integral part of the team, someone you're really looking to perform well this year.
Get to see Mark Stone doing a little one-on-one against Marc-Andre Fleury. Can only imagine what the chirping might sound like there if Fleury makes a save or Stone gets one by. No doubt two of the important leaders in this Golden Knights group, Mike.
Yeah, and that's another topic too. You know, leadership is huge in the National Hockey League. It's been bantered back and forth. Will there be a captain? Something I'd imagine we'll find out in the coming weeks. But look at Mark Stone's hair right now. I just want to make light of that. I mean, I think he's let it grow. It looks fantastic hanging out the side and the back of the helmet. We'll see if we can get a close-up on it there. That moment yesterday when he skated on the ice with the rest of his teammates, a little bit what was deemed to be late by teammates but was 7 minutes early. What a fun moment in the post-practice presser.
And then he skated around,
gave
just
the
make
wave.
a show of it.
You know, he looked like Sam Small Print Lyman from Slapshot, the infamous lawyer who skates around the ice, or waving at everybody. But yeah, I mean, you look at Mark Stone, and there's another player that as he goes, the Golden Knights go. You know, he does everything so well for the team. And speaking as someone who's been his teammate previously, the weight of his words in the locker room, the way he carries himself, and the knowledge of the game. You know, you don't always see that come through in his interviews. At times, you'll get little snippets of it. Mark Stone knows the National Hockey League and hockey in general as well as anybody. He knows the opponents. He knows all the intricate details. He's a very, very astute hockey mind.
In Ottawa, Colin White, Brady Tkachuk, line mates, what was passed along to those two, not only in terms of hockey X's and O's, but how you carry yourself, how to be a pro hockey player, and those things now filtering through in Vegas. We've talked about Cody Glass, Peyton Krebs, and the other young players. I wonder, Mike, can you put your finger on some of those intangibles that the young players would get from Mark at this stage that can help them?
Well, biggest thing to me is he takes them into their house to live with them. Brady Tkachuk, Peyton Krebs, correct, in the return to play was living with Mark Stone, and during the time training leading up to it, those opportunities to live with somebody who you look up to as a mentor, as a teammate, it says so much. And you don't do that unless it's a very selfless thing. You don't walk into a locker room and somebody says, hey, you need this person to live with you. It's out of your own desire. And you look at somebody who's had so much success in the league, and he's looking to pass that along. And really, it's by osmosis. When you're under the same roof, you eventually end up speaking hockey. It's inevitable, especially for young players that are looking to soak up everything you can. So, do you spend a lot of time playing with the dog? Sure. Do you spend a lot of time probably playing some video games? You bet. But in those conversations that occur at home, in the locker room, when you're sitting next to someone, that's where you really learn about the game at the professional, at the NHL level, and where you take his knowledge and take it to yourself and be able to take that into your own game.
A few more VGK Worldwide shout-outs. Saying hello to Noah on Facebook. Noah is tuned in from Montana. Love Montana country. I still haven't made it up there, but everybody who's been up, Rock Creek Cattle and the whole resort, it was the home base for the Golden Knights with the draft over the summer and the coverage we had up there. And, of course, the home to our very own Sage Salmons in Golden Knights Communications. Thanks to Noah for tuning in. Brendan on Facebook. Brendan is back with us from Fredericton, New Brunswick. Freddie Beach.
Freddie Beach, baby.
Freddie Beach.
It's an infamous hockey location.
Have you get to play there, Mike?
No.
It's been a few years since they had an American League.
I never made it much to the Maritimes, Dan.
Yeah.
I had been out of the American Hockey League when I was playing there. I did not play in the Quebec Major Junior League, which is it's kind of backfilled into some of those locations. But a good friend of mine, Jake Allen's from Freddie Beach. He has endless stories of it. But those areas in the Maritimes, Darren Millard could tell you all about. PEI and how beautiful it is during the summertime. Those are special parts. And I always enjoyed going to St. John's, to the Rock, playing exhibition games and American League games there. It's a cool part of North America.
Yeah, Dave Gosher has a bunch of stories because as an American League broadcaster in Providence, Rhode Island, would go up not only to Portland, Maine, but then continue across the border. And Fredericton, New Brunswick was one of those stops. One of the American League favorites, I believe Eric Nielsen is from Fredericton.
He is from there. Syracuse Crunch alum, as we know.
One of the fun personalities in recent years.
If anybody was ever geared to be a professional wrestler,
yeah.
I'm actually disappointed Eric Nielsen didn't become one. If you're interested in learning more about Eric Nielsen, just put that name into YouTube. You're going to love it. He was actually really one of Sidney Crosby's best friends.
That's right.
And at times his bodyguard in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Rimouski, right?
And Rimouski, yeah. Really, really tough player, but an incredible personality.
He does a great Ric Flair impersonation and got to meet Ric Flair, who was invited to a game there at Syracuse. Before we get too far off on that track, another shout out to Nathaniel, who's watching on YouTube in Oshawa. Thanks for tuning in, Nathaniel. Also, this is great. We mentioned the Twitch viewers earlier. Lord Skittles is with us on Twitch.
Hi, Lord.
Now,
Mr. Skittles.
We know that we've achieved something special when Lord Skittles is with us. And
you know what I'm still furious about?
Yeah?
They ditched the lime flavor Skittle in favor of green apple.
You know, I wasn't aware of that, to be honest with you. You were that attached to the lime flavor?
Yes. Yeah.
Taste the rainbow?
I mean, this is childhood. I mean, this every Halloween you're ripping into the Skittles, waiting for that lime and rejoicing in it, and that's been taken away from me, Dan. When I when I sneak, not steal my children's Halloween candy.
Careful word choice there. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got M&Ms all over the place. Peanut butter, regular peanut, you name it. The M&Ms, they all taste the same. You know, the colors don't impact the flavor.
No, they don't. The beauty factor.
We got a fact check on that. Same. Okay, good. Thanks.
Which one do you prefer? The peanut butter, traditional. What's your favorite?
I'm an equal opportunity M&Ms consumer.
You're like me with pizza. People argue about pizza endlessly. We did this on Fortress at home quite a bit. Thin crust, thick crust. New York style, I'm all in. But personal favorite right now, Detroit style. I love making Detroit style.
Well, we've got an update because Mr. KB, who we shouted out earlier across the pond, he's saying that it is dinner time over there in the UK.
Thank you, KB.
I don't know how the pizza in England might be. It's Europe, so.
Have you been to Europe, Dan?
I have, yeah. I've been to Italy. I haven't been to England, though.
The Sicilian soundbite's been to Italy. I mean, if we had to put a percentage chance on that.
It's been a few years. The hockey schedule precludes us from doing a lot of traveling in the off season, especially across the pond. But yeah, shout out to maybe the family in Italy is tuned in. We got to catch up with the folks over the holidays. Some speak English, and we have some Italian. How about your holidays, Mike? How was yours?
Well, they were good. They were quiet, small. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the COVID world today, it was our family and my parents. We kept it really tight. But what was really fun for the first time, my parents ended up staying at our house and being able to all come downstairs together, and just a really cool moment. And New Year's was another low-key event. I don't really like New Year's anyway, so it wasn't a big deal for me. But to see the look on the kids' faces, my daughters are 4 and 7 years old, come downstairs, presents under the tree, just really special. They're at that perfect age where it's just so much fun.
All right, so best gift that you received and gave?
Best gift I received was a new grill basket for my grill. I'm a charcoal enthusiast, Dan.
Oh.
So I know we can go
started.
deep into this. Gary Lawless and I have outstanding discussions. He's a fellow charcoal connoisseur. I know Shane Knighty prefers his Traeger, the pellet grill, which it makes great food. But I got a new grill basket that's amazing. You can actually take this basket and you dump your charcoal right into it, and you can move the divider so you can go low and slow, alternate 2-section cooking. Just amazing. And I've completely forgotten what else you asked me because I'm obviously so amped up about this grill basket and grill grate for my grill.
Well, I've been fortunate to experience Mike McKenna cooking a time or two.
Fair enough.
And
True.
you won the burger competition in where, Springfield, Massachusetts?
I did shortly before being traded. It was kind of like a farewell tour, if you will. It was the Thunder Burger, the Springfield Thunderbirds, the Thunder Burger. I could go into the rundown of what was on it, but I really took it seriously. It was a very goalie thing to do. We had a tasting night in advance where I had 2 concepts and we came up with the winner. We came to party, man. We were ready to go and faced off against 3 local chefs in the Springfield, Massachusetts area. And you know what the coolest part was, Dan? This was the Florida Panthers organization at the time, but Brian McCabe showed up with the team. And, he took care of all the guys, and it ended up being a really fun thing. And I think they rigged the voting in my favor. I mean, it was a good burger, trust me. And it was on the menu a couple of years later in Texas. It was a good burger, but, there may have been a little foul play involved, but hey, I'll take the championship.
One of your tours of duty in Springfield, Massachusetts included the gentleman who's in stripes right now, and that is Ryan Craig, a Springfield Falcon once upon a time, and it looks like the Golden Knights are transitioning into scrimmage mode here.
I talked to Ryan the other day, and he said that it took him back to his youth days refereeing. So he actually has experience with the stripes on. That's an extra jersey that's laying around in case it's needed for game time. But you can watch, if you see Ryan and his movements on the ice, his back is always to the boards, his head up ice. He gets to the blue lines. He gets to the goal line. Maybe not with the speed of an NHL official because it's a scrimmage in training camp. But he's made some daring calls, Dan. I haven't seen a penalty yet.
He's got guts.
But he's made some really, really gutsy
Just
offsides
like as
calls.
he did as a player.
Absolutely. And, you talk about somebody who you didn't want to see in front of the net, Dan. There may not be another player on the face of the earth that has had my stick touch the back of his legs more than Ryan Craig. The number of times that we played against each other, and he was just parked in front of me every time on the power play. And I'd always give him a couple whacks, and I'd have to apologize to him afterwards because I knew that, if it ever came to blows, I was in big trouble, Dan. That's a strong individual, and I am the opposite of that. I couldn't fight my way out of a paper bag. And he was always fun to play against, though, because as hard as he played, he was a very honest player. Played fair, and you really respected what he did on the ice. It's no surprise that he's finding success in the coaching world.
Yeah, and really you wonder if he could have kept on playing a little bit. The opportunity to be part of the Golden Knights coaching staff a few years ago made the transition just so smoothly. And he's out there as the official for this scrimmage. And I think that with the scrimmage getting going a little bit early here, let's duck in and let you feel and hear the sounds of Golden Knights hockey. Again, this is the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. Training Camp is brought to us by Martin Harris Construction. Let's listen in as Ryan Craig drops the puck. Golden Knights Training Camp Day 3. Training camp brought to you by Martin Harris Construction. Dan D'Uva here with Mike McKenna. It's the Training Camp Bulletin presented by NextGen. Golden Knights have begun their scrimmage portion of today's on-ice activity. Mike, a little bit earlier than they have the first couple of days. We didn't think they would start the scrimmage until a quarter past 11 Pacific time, and they went right to it.
Yeah, it was a pretty quick warm-up. You know, I'm sitting here expecting we might do a little bit of system or special teams, and really it was largely a warm-up to get ready for this scrimmage. So not knowing the full schedule on it, maybe they go a bit longer with it. But, you know, you're just trying to find that familiarity, get things going. As much time as you can get in a live game setting without those exhibition games is beneficial.
And we've talked about it a little bit. The Golden Knights will play their first game on the 14th against the Ducks at T-Mobile Arena. That's day 2 of the NHL regular season. A host of games will be played a week from today, which is January 13th. No preseason games, only inter-squad action, as we see here today. And it might vary a little bit from day to day. But also considering, Mike, you got to have a day off in here. And Friday will be, at least as of now, a scheduled day off. Tomorrow, we don't have an exact schedule. It seems that they're cognizant, they meaning the staff and management, of maximizing their time, but also making sure there's the appropriate recovery time.
Absolutely. You need those days off. And mind you, too, you're only allowed to have 3 hours a day at training camp. That's a stipulation in the CBA. So you have to make the most of that for everybody that you possibly can. That's why it's so beneficial to have 2 rinks going and have two squads be able to practice on opposing rinks before you finally get back out and scrimmage. You're maximizing that time. So the day off is definitely going to be welcome after 4 hard days worth of training camp and after doing testing. I'd imagine the guys are probably going to go pretty heavy on the food that day and the rest. You know, you're always looking forward to those where on game days and on practice days at times it can actually be hard to get a lot of food down. And off days like that where you know you've got the opportunity to just veg out a little bit and let your body rest, and if you need a little rehab, you may be able to get that, but those are nice days for a hockey player. A little time off.
Getting a feel for which players are skating with whom, different line combinations, and from what we have gathered so far, it looks very similar, if not identical, to what we saw yesterday, with the notable exception of Alex Tuch returning to practice. He did not skate yesterday. Pete DeBoer told us it was just maintenance, a little sore from day one. Tuch was out there earlier with the line mates from day 1 of camp, who were Cody Glass and Nick Waugh. And you see Alex Tuch in the middle of your screen right there, number 89 in white. And there's Shea Theodore in gray. And this leads us, Mike, to the conversation about not only the Golden Knights defense as it stands now, but also the transition. This is a different defensive core than we saw just at the beginning of return to play, and certainly different than it was at the beginning of the 2019-2020 season.
Well, think about the names that have gone out, come in. John Merrill moves on. Derek Englund retires. Nate Schmidt is traded to Vancouver, and you bring in Alex Pietrangelo. Zach Whitecloud claims a spot, forces his way into the lineup. You bring in Alec Martinez. Really, for me, what that's done, it's made the defense a little bit more mobile, and it's injected even more youth into it. I love the depth of the Golden Knights on defense right now. You got Carl Dahlstrom, who's played a lot of NHL games, always available if need be, and you have young players pushing. Pete DeBoer said, Nick Hague looks like an NHL defenseman. Dylan Coghlan is pressing for NHL time. You need big mobile defensemen that can play, that can shoot, that are right-handed. That's a big one. That's a big reason why Alex Pietrangelo was so highly sought after. Not just because he's one of the best defensemen in the league that you'll put over the boards in every opportunity. He's right-handed. That's a premium. That's part of the reason why Zach Whitecloud has been an integral part of the Golden Knights, why Derek Englund was, because he's right-handed. So you look at that depth, you still got Jimmy Schultz growing into his game as well. So I think it's a very, very nice balance for the Golden Knights at this stage of veteran players, of what you would call, middle gap players and prospects that are pushing. You're at the stage of the organization now in year 4 that the prospects are coming, Dan. And that's exciting because you have to have them. You need them to fill in those spaces and gain roles as your organization moves forward.
Let's run through how the defensive pairs have been set up here, Mike, because you mentioned the right-handedness and the lack thereof. Derek Englund, for a while, was the only right-handed defenseman, and we know that later on in last season, Derek was used less and less and was not used during the postseason. Zach Whitecloud, of course, then became that right-handed defenseman, often with Nick Holden on the left side. But the other pairs were all left-handed, McNabb and Schmidt, Martinez and Theodore. And here's a look at what you have as of now. Alex Pietrangelo, top pair, right-handed, in the spot where Nate Schmidt was, along with the left-handed Braden McNabb. The other pair, and talking on the white team, you've got Nick Hague and Zach Whitecloud, the two young guys, each who had significant NHL time last year. Hague at the beginning scored a goal in his last NHL game before being reassigned to the Chicago Wolves in the American League. Whitecloud got the look and looked as comfortable as anybody on the blue line for the Knights. And so those two guys are together. We just saw Dylan Coghlan with Nick Holden. So Holden on the left and Coghlan righty on that side. Then the familiar Martinez and Theodore. You also mentioned Dahlstrom, who's been paired with Jimmy Schultz. And then you've got Jake Bischoff and Braden Pahal. So you've got those pairs. What do you make of what you have seen? And again, McNabb, Pietrangelo, Hague, Whitecloud, Bischoff, Pahal on the white team. The gray team, we're seeing Martinez with Theodore, Holden with Coghlan, Schultz with Dahlstrom. What do you make of those combinations?
It's not just what I've seen, it's what I've heard. You know, in the availability after practice, Petrangelo's talked about McNabb, his partner, and Shea Theodore's talked about his defensive partner, Alec Martinez, and vice versa. So to me, that shows that these are pretty ingrained. I think we're literally going to look at those two pairings as being the top four for the Golden Knights. And I like that. I like that you have some availability for right and left-handed to be intermixed. And you take Alex Pietrangelo, who's a top 5, top 6 defenseman in the league, and Shea Theodore, who's trending towards that as well, and you split them up. That's a dynamic 1-2 punch on defense split between two pairings. My question is, when does the nuclear option come in? When do you put them together? Because you don't necessarily want to have them together the entire game, but there's going to be moments in time where you need some extra juice. And there's going to be teams that, much like Dallas, do a very good job of pressuring Shea Theodore's partner, Alec Martinez, or Shea Theodore. And when they're both left-handed, if a team pre-scouts well enough, they may have an answer for that. So you always have the availability of going to Pietrangelo Theodore. Can you imagine those two taking the ice, Dan?
Look at the play that Pietrangelo just made, and then the shot attempt. I mean, Pietrangelo just made a strong defensive play right in front of Marc-Andre Fleury a few seconds after Marc made a pad save with those notably bright, shimmering gold pads.
And I don't think there's two goalies in the league with more swagger when it comes to their setups than Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury. Two very different goaltenders, of course, in how they play and how they look. But Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, if you're on the opposing team and you look up ice and you see that pairing, you know you're in for a tough night. And that's not to say that Braden McNabb and Alec Martinez are going to be just as scary with it, because now you're facing two of them at a time.
I wanted to ask you that question, Mike. For context, there are some great defensemen around the NHL. Some of the names are familiar. Victor Hedman, of course, just with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not sure that there is another guy on, say, the Lightning who's at or near Victor Hedman's level. Can you try to put in context what it means to have defensemen the caliber of Theodore, who's clearly on the rise, Pietrangelo, established one of the best in hockey, to have two of those guys on the same team? How common is that?
It's not very. You know, Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa Bay would probably fit that role. He's about as close as you get. Who's on the rise. Dallas, Klingberg, Heiskanen is taking over there. There's two teams that have something of a similar setup to what the Golden Knights have, but to have the two of legitimately top 10 defensemen in the league on your team and at different phases of their career. You know, Alex Pietrangelo is very much in the prime of his career. Shea Theodore is just now starting to hit that. It's rare. And you don't get that opportunity very often, and it plays into what Kelly McCrimmon said. When a player like that becomes available, it just hardly ever happens. You got to try to capitalize if you can.
we hinted at goaltenders, and it's amazing that we haven't already gone deep into the goaltending, considering your area of expertise.
We're branching out.
So the other part of it is, I asked, what team in hockey has a defensive duo like Pietrangelo and Theodore? What team in hockey has a goaltending duo like Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Leonard?
When you look last year in the return to play, you might think, oh, Boston, Rask and Halak. Well, I think we saw Halak that's not quite the same level as we may see here. Dallas, when they have Bishop healthy and Anton Hudobin, great pairing. Well, Bishop's not there to start the season. To me, when you look at pairings across the league, it's tough to find a team that has this caliber of goaltending. Two goalies that have truly been number ones, that are looking to still be number ones. They both want to play. They're going to battle for it. Even a situation like a Carey Price and Jake Allen combination in Montreal. Jake Allen's been a number one previously. He's taken a back burner the last couple of years. That's not the case with the Vegas Golden Knights goaltenders. It's such a position of strength, and in the condensed schedule where you're looking at maybe a 5-3 ratio in terms of games. Maybe it's 2-1.
Right.
What's the optimum mix for goaltenders?
Right. 56-game season. Don't forget the playoffs. You could have, it's the normal playoffs, so it could be 4 rounds.
I can tell you what the mix is not. The mix is not 4-1 like it used to be. You're not going to trot Marty Brodeur out to play 75 games.
Right. No goalie's going to play 50 games this
Absolutely.
year.
I mean, the minimum you're seeing is a 2-1 ratio, I think. So it's not just that it's a position of strength, but you're going to have two goaltenders that come playoff time, fingers crossed, obviously, they're both going to be ready to play. And that's what you need, because in this world today, let's not forget, we're in the middle of COVID. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You can potentially... You could lose a player overnight, and you need depth at that position. And that's a strength again. Oscar Dansk has played good minutes for the Golden Knights. There's a belief that he can do more, that he wants more. And even Logan Thompson in camp is a goaltender who the team actively sought out as a free agent, who they think very highly of.
And that's so critical because the American Hockey League, come February, will be starting to play. You'll need a third goalie on the Knights roster on the taxi squad. So now that's not permanent. Those goalies can move between, say, the taxi squad and the American League, but there are an array of protocols. What if a team is on the road and all those things that go into it?
It's not as simple as just flipping them out.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be some thought process put into moving somebody off the taxi squad to potentially the Henderson Silver Knights. What's your balance of that? Great question to ask somebody smarter than myself. But I do think that when you look at not just goaltenders, Dan, we're talking about prospects in general. Do you want them playing games in the American League? Do you want them on the taxi squad? And to me, what it comes down to is, does this player need games? Is this player right out of junior hockey, right out of college hockey? Or do they have a couple of years of pro experience that they can draw upon to be successful in the taxi squad setting where they may not be playing games, but you can plug them into the lineup, right? Patrick Brown, you can put him in the lineup. He probably could go 6 months without a game and put him right in and be ready to go. That's the type of player that you'd like to have in those depth roles. The younger players, you're really going to be looking for someone on your taxi squad to think that this is a guy that's going to play 40, 50 games for us, or else we need them to play games in the American Hockey League.
Well, we're talking about the American League. There is realignment, temporary divisional realignment in the American League this year, and it's 3 teams fewer than normal. 3 teams opted out, and because of the border and regions, the divisions are totally unbalanced. The Atlantic Division has only 3 teams: Bridgeport, Hartford, and Providence. The aforementioned Springfield Thunderbirds, I almost said Falcons, I didn't, cut myself off. The Springfield Thunderbirds, one of the teams that opted out. In the Canadian division, there are only 4 Canadian American League teams: the Belleville Senators, the Laval Rocket, Manitoba Moose, and the Toronto Marlies. Then you've got a North Division and a Pacific Division that are closer to normal numbers, and then a Central with Chicago, Cleveland, Grand Rapids, Iowa, Rockford, and Texas. Mention the Pacific Division, which includes the Henderson Silver Knights, also the Colorado Eagles, the Bakersfield Condors, the San Jose Barracuda, the Stockton Heat, the Tucson Roadrunners, and then you've got the Ontario Reign and the San Diego Gulls. And those last couple of teams are playing in the NHL team facility rather than in their normal home arenas. They're playing, right in the backyard of the parent club.
And Providence is playing in the middle of Massachusetts in their practice
Marlboro,
facility.
right?
And
Yeah.
tell you what, they better peg those nets or else it's going to be a really interesting game. I remember one preseason game I played in the Marlboro Ice Arena, and it was myself and Zane McIntyre was on Providence at the time, another goaltender. We probably knocked the net off 40 times that game.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully they take care of that, but it's a development year for the American Hockey League is what it comes down to. It's an odd year. Frankly, they're happy that they're going to be able to play games. You're trying to find any way to get your prospects ice time and make sure that these NHL teams have at least the availability to get their players on the ice. What it turns into, whether it's 24, 48, whatever amount of games you end up getting into the schedule, you need that. But it's very much patchwork.
That is the perspective of an organization, the Golden Knights and every other organization want those prospects to get time on the ice.
Oh, and what an advantage having the team in Henderson.
Oh, my goodness.
Couldn't have played that better.
I wanted to ask you about the other perspective, Mike, and that is the players' perspective, these young guys who are, in the case of the Silver Knights, it's a new franchise, we know, but the value of that other group of AHL player, and you have recently been one, the veteran AHL player. Guys who are not prospects, guys who maybe have had a taste of the NHL, but perhaps they're past that window. Those guys almost always operate on one-year contracts.
Yep.
And how many of those players who would be playing in a normal AHL season right now have a deal of uncertainty, unaccustomed throughout their career so far?
It's been strange. And you've seen something of an exodus to Europe. Some players they couldn't wait any longer. The ironic part to that is now those players are in demand because there is going to be American Hockey League. And, Ryan Craig to me is the perfect example of somebody who leveraged his career to play longer than maybe even expected by being such a good player and good mentor at the American League level in his later years. And without question, that was invaluable, the time he spent mentoring and being a gap between the players and the coaching staff to what he's doing now. So you definitely are going to need those players, but it's just such a unique year. It may even be tough to come by and find some of those players when you're just trying to backfill with as many prospects as you possibly can just to get them games.
It looks like the scrimmage portion has concluded, but Ryan Craig still has some instructions to offer.
He does no longer have the referee jersey on, though.
So a different type of routine today as compared to the first couple of days of camp where after the scrimmage, that was it. Yep. We were all done. So here they've done some drills, then into scrimmage mode, now back into some more organized coaching. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm curious to see what direction they go with this. Right now, Ryan Craig's diagramming what he wants to see. There's additional help on the ice, it looks like right now. There may be skills. I believe Misha Donskov is now on the ice.
It's harder to identify people.
Right, player development. And usually at the end of practices, this is when you will see skill sessions come in. We haven't seen much of that due to training camp time regulations. This would be a good moment for it. We haven't seen, and Thompson hasn't seen a lot of action at all in terms of, he's seen none from the scrimmage standpoint, so I'm sure he's happy to get some shots. But from what we're looking at right now, it appears that it is most of the prospects, along with the CNR line. Nick Waz on the ice right now as well. So just getting a little bit of extra work and making sure that Thompson's pads are plenty broken in.
And let's not forget about those goalie coaches, Mike. You've got Mike Rosati, who remains with the Golden Knights, who transitioned into that role last year. There's also been a new goaltending coach to join the organization who will be assigned to the Henderson Silver Knights, and that is Freddie Brathwaite. How about that addition?
No, it's a big one. This is somebody with a lot of experience, not just as a player. If you look up his past.
Well, I got to tell you, before you talk about his past, in preparation for the show and reading through some of the notes, and we do like everybody does, you Google somebody, and I love how one of the first images that comes up is Brathwaite in an Atlanta Thrashers jersey, which is, you don't see those anymore, but they stand out.
He had a fantastic pro career. After that, he has delved into goalie coach. He was an Islanders goalie coach for a full season. He's been a development goalie coach previously. He's helped out, I believe, with Team Canada at times too. He has a wealth of knowledge that they can draw from, especially young players at the American League They need as much a mental coach as a technical coach. And when you can rely on someone like Freddie Brathwaite, who's been through every scenario, he's played in the minors, played a lot of minutes in the NHL, he's played in Europe, he's done it all. That's very valuable to a young goaltender to rely on. Again, not just the technical standpoint. And it was a gap that needed to be filled. You're seeing this come into play now that goalie departments are a thing. You're seeing a head goalie coach at the NHL, a development goalie coach that's there full time. Some teams are even employing goalie scouts now, goaltending directors overseeing everything. For years and years, Dan, we said goaltending is the most important position. You can't win without goaltending, and then goalies were ignored. Well, I don't know anything about goaltending. I let them do their thing. That was the mantra from some coaches. Thankfully, that's all changing, and that's why goaltending has gotten so much better. Without question, Freddie's a big get. Mike Rosati, we talked about earlier how Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury are very different goaltenders. To me, if I'm Mike Rosati, that's a fun challenge. Imagine being a goalie coach and having the opportunity to work with two very different goalies and get the most out of them. Find out what makes them tick. Pick their brain and find out what they think makes them successful. Because a lot of times when it comes to coaching goalies, players across the board, you need them to be able to coach themselves to the best of their ability, and you provide them ancillary information.
Yeah.
Whether they're goalies, forwards, it doesn't matter. That's a fun task for a coach.
It's an interesting challenge because a number of NHL goaltending coaches would have a number one, and then you're trying to work with the number two, who's often a younger guy working his way up, maybe in a backup role, or it's a veteran guy who doesn't need a lot of attention. It's interesting here where, listen, Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury are accomplished professionals. They can carry themselves. But I wonder how much Rosati can impart to them in handling this competitive situation where it's not only making sure you're technically on top of your game, but that you're mentally where you need to be.
It's going to take communication, and that's something Mike Rosati is excellent at. Super warm individual.
Yeah, you said that's exactly right. And not that I've been around him nearly as much as a player would be, but warm is a great word.
And he's a person you want to be around. And as a player, as a goaltender, that's what you need. You need your goalie coach in your corner, too. You need them to understand what makes you tick. So, I think for him, it's a challenge of making sure you keep them engaged, not just in games, but in practice, and finding out that proper workload. Both of these goaltenders, Lehner and Fleury, are going to have to be ready to play. So how hard do you push them after practice? When do you get that extra session in? When do you take the time to drill down on video work or technical work? In a condensed season, and in a situation where both goalies are presumably going to play a lot, that's a challenge.
We talked a moment ago about deploying the goalies in the ratio and how many games, 2-1. Is it, 1-1 with Vegas, Lehner and Fleury? Do they split it 23-23? I mean, that seems unlikely to play out that way just because, things happen. But those are the numbers. That's the 30,000-foot view of things. But making the day-to-day call, how does Pete DeBoer go about it? And Pete was clear last year, and it seems that was a little bit of a change where in the early years, with Gerard Glenn as the head coach, Turk would describe how it was an organizational decision. It wasn't necessarily he alone who chose the goalie. I don't know exactly what kind of conversations they have, but Pete has made it clear that he's picking the goalie.
Yeah.
And made that clear again in the return to play, using Robin Lehner more than he used Fleury over the summer. So I wonder if he, A, learned anything different from how the summer went, and then on a day-to-day basis, game-to-game basis, how he makes that decision. What criteria would you examine?
Well, you have to look, obviously, at performance, and you have to have some feel to it. You have to understand your athletes. That's where the communication within the staff comes in. Ultimately, Pete DeBoer said, I am making the decisions. That's what's going to happen. But you have to take every little bit of information you possibly can, a lawyer's mentality.
Pete's got that.
Exactly. You need every bit of information to make the best decision you can. And I think you have to rely on Mike Rosati, on your goalie coach, on your defensive coach, on Ryan McGill. What are the D feeling in front of a certain goaltender? What's your feel? You rely on people.
Yeah.
But it comes down to your gut feeling, Dan. When you're a head coach, a lot of it, you got to make that decision on the fly yourself.
The different wrinkle this year is playing the same team 2 in a row. That happens scant in a normal regular season. Of course, in the playoffs, it intrinsically means you're playing the same team 4 to 7 times. Regular season, it's the Ducks twice, Arizona 4 times, later on in the year, Colorado 4 times in a row. But you're playing these sets like a baseball series. Does the reality of the schedule have an impact on changing a goalie? In other words, say, let's just make it up. Say Robin Lehner starts game 1 against the Ducks. He's fantastic. Do you go back with him the next day? Because, all right, he was great and he's hot, but now maybe the Ducks have figured him out. Or do you go with Fleury, who might also be very good, but it's a different look for the Ducks, and that could throw the Ducks off? Are you thinking about throwing off the other team? Does that play into it?
Not as much the other team, but I think you're looking at this with a very calculated approach. You're looking at these sets, 2, 3 games, 4 games at times in a row against a team. I'd be very surprised if you asked Pete DeBoer in advance of those sets. I'm sure he wouldn't tell you exactly who it may be, but if he has a plan for the goaltending for that next set, I would expect that. You know, I think that you look at not as much opponent, but just the time of it. Whether it's the rest, whether it's the back-to-back, that all plays into it. I don't think it's as much a mental thing of whether a guy's going against the team. I think it could play into it down the stretch, but early in the season, I think it'll be very much more predicated on what they want to have in terms of minutes logged, playing time. And I mean, I can tell you as a player, these stretches of games are going to be really interesting to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the rivalries that get built up in a game or two and how that plays out, you see it in college, in junior hockey, in the minors where teams play against each other often, in playoffs in the NHL. It's a new dynamic that I'm excited to see this. And I'm excited to see how the Golden Knights make micro changes within a series, because that's going to be key. You can't roll out the exact same thing every single time and expect the other team not to adapt to it if you're playing well. That cat and mouse game is going to be fascinating to watch.
Now let's dive into something that the goalies really want to talk about. Because the X's and O's are fine. But the goalies
talk
want
equipment.
We were talking
Can we
about
talk equipment?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks
you just know how to make a man happy.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic. Let's go. Goalie gear.
There we go. So
this is it.
ZD37 on Twitch is asking specifically for you, Mike, to talk about Marc-Andre Fleury's new pads. He's got the gold pads. Listen, I've never been a goalie, so I can't quite grasp what this all means to you. Now, I've been a broadcaster for a while. I know what it means to have my own headset, my own microphone, my own earphone, those kinds of things. But it seems to me that goaltenders have an abnormal obsession with their gear. Your thoughts?
Completely normal. Why do you think so many of us become goaltenders?
I see. This is a chicken or the egg proposition.
And this is where it goes off on tangents and self-fulfilling prophecies where people say, goalies are weird. And I contend, Dan, that goalies are creative. We love designing equipment and masks. You know, we're the art kids of the hockey world. And that's what it comes down to for me. To go deeper on Marc-Andre Fleury's equipment, they're actually pretty much the same pads as he's had previously. There's a different brand on them this year, but it's the same constructor of pad. So there's a family called Lefebvre out of Quebec that he's worn for years and years and years. That used to be associated with one major company. They've switched to another one. Marc-Andre's equipment has actually stayed very, very much the same. He still has the same leather strapping on the back of his pads, which is very old school. You don't see that very often anymore. Most goaltenders have gone to an elastic and Velcro setup. Robin Lehner uses very intricately detailed pads designed by, I believe, a fan, actually, which is super cool with the Knight design. Same pads as last year. Very broken in. He likes soft equipment. He's not someone who really likes as stiff a gear. He'll use it right out of the box, like most goalies nowadays, because it's built to their specifications. Dan, years ago, you get your pads out of the box, and if you're Archer's Herbe, you run over it with the team bus to soften it up. That's a true story.
Serious?
Not kidding. You'd have people out in their driveway.
Does that work?
I mean, it discolors slightly. It does soften it up. It's a 2-ton 18-wheeler. But you'd see players, you'd see young kids out in their driveway tomahawking their pads with a stick, trying to break them down. It's not like that anymore. They're all made out of foam and synthetic materials. They come out of the box how you want them and how you like them. So whether you like them soft, whether you like them stiff, that's how you get. We're seeing Logan Thompson in net right now. He has a stiffer pad. He actually has just about the same setup as what I used. And the best part, what hand does he catch with, Dan?
Oh, yes. Look at that, the southpaw.
I mean, Darren Elliott and myself, we saw this young man sign that contract, and we went, yeah, yakpot. This guy's got it going on. But he does. He catches with the right hand, which is a rarity for goaltenders. It's not a plus. It's not a minus. But for all of us that do it that way, it's always cool to see.
Have you ever done what Marc-Andre Fleury allegedly did moments ago during the scrimmage when he was pulled for an extra attacker? And if you are following the Golden Knights on Twitter, you'll see a photograph of a vacated crease and a goaltender's stick on the ice parallel to the goal line. I'm not sure that's allowed.
It's not legal. It's I think it was a tough call for referee Ryan Craig,
who did spot it, and there's video evidence of him retrieving the stick, because that would not be fair.
You know, about the most offsides thing I ever did in a game was in college, where we were playing in a preseason tournament at St. Cloud State, or against St. Cloud State. I apologize. I believe it was a Lefty McFadden tournament in Dayton, Ohio. And you typically didn't have shootouts in college hockey back then, Dan. But we tied, and it was a tournament, so we went to a shootout. They don't bring out the Zambonis back then. It's 2004 or 5. So I went to work building a couple of mounds of snow right in the slot.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, the other team's going bananas. And I knew that they were eventually going to get the squeegees out and move it, and I was going to get chastised for it. But I didn't care because it was all mental. I was getting in their heads.
There you go.
I was driving them crazy. It's like in Slapshot when Reg Dunlop tells Ned Braden, "No, I make them crazy. We win because I make them crazy." That's what I was trying to do.
Did you ever, in the midst of a 2-on-1 or 2-on-0 breakaway, intentionally knock the goal off its pegs?
Nope. I absolutely.
That was a thing. Who was the goalie who they made
that was
a rule
David
on?
Leggio.
Yes, David Leggio.
He was facing a 2-on-0.
Was he in Bridgeport at the time?
Yeah, and Leggio went to Clarkson, so I can't say very many good things about him. I went to
Like
St.
Clarkson,
Lawrence,
St.
they're our
Lawrence
arch rival.
Yes,
We
upstate New
were actually briefly teammates in Portland, and I like Dave, but he's a creative guy. He actually does an amazing Pierre McGuire impersonation. You can YouTube that as well, but yeah, Leggio sees a 2-on-0 coming down at him, and he turns around and flips the net. Because he would rather face a penalty shot. That was his thought process. And he faced the penalty shot and he stopped it. Well, needless to say, much like when Sean Avery stood in front of Marty Brodeur and put his hand in front of his face, there was
Waving his stick.
There was a rule made within a week. You can no longer turn around and flip the net off. Yeah, you can't do that.
No.
It's creative, though.
VGK Worldwide Shoutouts. David on YouTube is watching from Cole Harbor. Wow, that is another shout out to the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, and down in Florida, Christian is also watching on YouTube. So thank you both for tuning in, and all of you out there, whether you're on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch.com. Is that all of them?
MySpace?
I don't know if we have the MySpace any longer. That might have been put out to
How many balls do we have in the air right now? I think we're on 6, 7 different streaming channels. We've got to hit it from every angle.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure that you can access as much Golden Knights hockey as possible. And by the way, in addition to this training camp bulletin presented by NextGen, we have no shortage of additional coverage of Golden Knights training camp presented by Martin Harris Construction. And I've got to author the shout out to Darren Millard, who's again producing the VGK Daily podcast. And that comes out. It's right in your subscriptions on iTunes. It's also on SoundCloud. It's wherever you get your podcast. That comes out every morning. You wake up, there it is. And Darren takes you through all the day's news, the sound from players and coaches, and what to watch out for the next day. And I enjoy having a little bit of a hand in helping Darren with that, but he's the real man behind making that podcast happen. It was his vision, and he's writing it, he's producing it. I just hit the publish button. But it's invaluable. But that's, Mike, just one of the various things that we've got for the Golden Knights fans.
Dan, it's a smorgasbord of content. Could you fathom us having more ways to connect with our fans? Honestly, I don't know of any team that super serves their fans like this. And it's great for the fans. It's fun for us as broadcasters. We get to stay busy and do these things and reach out. And just even doing these training camp streams right now is fantastic, as we watch Ryan Craig working on a little bit of face-off action right now. It looks like with Reed Duke at center ice, Gage Quinney looking on. They're doing their skill session post-practice right now.
And I can't believe that in a week's time, 8 days, I suppose, we'll get to do this at a Golden Knights game, an actual hockey game, and it will be in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena, Golden Knights and Ducks. And I pulled out my handy-dandy schedule here, Mike, and might as well take a peek at that upcoming schedule. It is a 7 o'clock start. The times for all of the games were released just a couple of days ago. So you saw the dates and the opponents, but now we've got the times to go along with it. 7 o'clock for the first 4 home games. Ducks ×2, Coyotes ×2. The 14th, the 16th, the 18th, and the 20th are the first 4 games, Ducks and Coyotes. That's Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. All of them are at 7 o'clock, and the regular broadcast channels apply for all the coverage. By the way, on the radio, now it's an hour-long pregame show on the Vegas Golden Knights radio network, so we're very excited about that.
Very nice. Dan, are you hosting that?
No, I've got to get all my notes. Look at all the items on the table.
I hope people understand.
It takes me an hour just to get all of this organized.
We could truly do a full hour-long segment just on Dan and his notes. And there's been some people in the broadcasting world that when it came time to learn a new sport, learn how to prepare for it, this is the guy they go to, Mr. Dan D'Uva. Former professor at Syracuse University.
I've still got my faculty ID up at the Newhouse School, but I do have my
You're supposed
charts.
to turn those in when you leave, Dan.
I even have the key to my
This
old
guy's
office.
going to get
Don't
nailed
tell
for
anybody.
trespassing. You wonder if Dan's gone. It's because he's gone back to Syracuse and got nailed on trespassing charges. Where's the sound bite?
My name is still on the
We
wall
gotta
there
bail him
last
out.
I checked, so I think they allow that. But I pulled out my notes from the last Golden Knights game from September 14th, Game 5 against the Dallas Stars. And while most of this is really not meaningful for today's broadcast, it does start to refresh your memory about things, storylines that the Golden Knights were dealing with at the time. And I was asked a question on a radio show yesterday, Mike, with the way that this whole training camp is going and the layoff and all of that. Which aspect of the game is most likely to be slowest out of the gate? Is it the goaltending? Is it the defense? Is it the scoring? What's going to be the most difficult? And it's an interesting question, but the thought that came to me was, if you look at the return to play, after the long break, the Golden Knights did have that time to try to get ready for the bubble. The offense came out smoking. They were scoring more than 4 goals per game through the round robin, through the first couple of rounds, and then they hit the brick wall. Now, there were a couple of goaltenders in there who might get credit for that, but if the offense started out guns a-blazing and then started to diminish, does that give us any indication on what this start of the season will look like?
I think we're going to see something of a blend of the return to play in a normal regular season. The players have been on the ice with each other for long enough now that there's some similarity to starting a regular year. And there wasn't a whole lot of uncertainty in terms of if it was going to happen. It was more of a win. So the players knew how to prepare for it. Dan, anytime you start another season, I always have this belief that the first 2 weeks are mayhem. You never know what's going to happen. You might see a 9-1 score. You might see a 6-4 across the board. And things generally start to kind of come back down to earth by that second or third week. I think we're going to see that this year in a very similar way. I do believe special teams is where you usually see the biggest difference. A team can start out on the power play absolutely red hot. Maybe they've changed their system from the previous year and it throws a curveball into teams when they're doing pre-scout. That happens pretty often. Maybe you have new personnel who have never killed before. I'll give you a great example. Alex Pietrangelo, fantastic penalty killer. Has he ever done it for Pete DeBoer? He has not. So will he be able to respond to that? He's one of the best defensemen in the world. I would sure imagine so. But there are instances where it takes players a little bit of time to adapt. You can't expect him to walk into a brand new scenario and knock it out of the park right away. So I think we're looking at something that may be a little bit more extended time than a normal regular season, but not quite to the same extent of the return to play.
Talk about Pete DeBoer, his first preseason training camp with the Golden Knights. But it's almost like he's been through this twice with the Golden Knights. Remember that he was hired right before that break. It's amazing. It's almost a year ago now. There was that long break, the All-Star break, and the bye week together in January a year ago. And Pete DeBoer had that break to figure out what he wanted to do, work with the coaches, and then sort of implement things after that break. He had a couple of games before the break to, get his fingers wet, and it was in Ottawa, of course, that he coached his first Golden Knights game. Stones returned to play against the Senators, turned out really well. But then there was that bye week, the All-Star break, and afterwards the Knights were on the road. He had that opportunity. Then March happens, and there's a long break. Then there's phase 3 of return to play, and it felt like a training camp scenario. Now, this is like, and maybe I'm overplaying this, but it's almost like the third time he's come into a camp-type scenario with that mentality, even though this is the beginning of his first full season as the head coach here.
Mark Stone really said it best in his post-practice interview the other day, that he felt like at this point the team knows Pete DeBoer's systems, and it really started to sink in right before the league went on pause last year. That's when the team was hitting their stride. They were playing very good hockey. I think 11 out of 13 wins or something like that.
Great win in
into the pause.
Edmonton. It put them in a good
Correct.
spot for the division, and obviously they ended up winning the division as a result of that strong finish.
Right. And then they come back to the return to play, rattle off 6 wins in a row, playing excellent hockey, run into hot goaltending, run into defense that clog the middle and don't let things get to the outside or to the inside. The team was playing very, very well. And Pete DeBoer's hinted at, hey, we're not going to change something that's working. We're going to make tweaks. Absolutely. You have to stay on top of things as a coach in the NHL. But this is the point where the team should feel comfortable within his system. The personnel, especially as the forwards have not rolled over as many players as the defense. And even the defense that are now with the Golden Knights have largely been under Pete DeBoer. And again, going back to Alex Pietrangelo, DeBoer has said several times just how impressed he is with his hockey IQ, with his hockey knowledge, and how much Pete DeBoer likes just talking hockey with Alex Pietrangelo. When you learn from your players as a head coach, that's a great sign. It's a two-way street. It just adds to the intelligence factor of the team, and another Stanley Cup winner. It's invaluable to have.
We're seeing the final stragglers of Golden Knights practice this morning, day 3 of training camp, brought to us by Martin Harris Construction. And we just saw we did see Dylan Cogman, but I was going to mention Nick Hague and Zach Whitecloud going off. And those are the guys who started to crack the Golden Knights roster last year and had to, on multiple occasions, be told by coaches and teammates, older teammates, you don't have to be the last guy on the ice. This isn't the minors where the rookie has got to pick up the pucks and do all of those things. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, but
the
it
things
still
going
goes a long way.
Yeah, and so it's still interesting to see that Whitecloud and Hague just now skated off together, and clearly there are others who still want to be on the ice right now.
It becomes old habit. But my favorite part last year watching was Marc-Andre Fleury at the end of practices. Yeah. Here's a guy who's won 3 Stanley Cups. He's been an all-star, been in the Vezina contention. He's led teams to finals, and he's in his 14th, 15th, 16th year pro, and he's out there picking up pucks after practice. Yeah. I mean, if you want a lesson for your child who's playing hockey, who's making his way through the ranks, her way through the ranks, watch Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah. Watch the lack of ego involved, the little things that you do as a teammate.
This will be the 18th NHL season of which Marc-Andre Fleury will be a part. Drafted first overall by Pittsburgh in 2003, and while that was not a full season in the NHL, he did go back to junior that year, Cape Breton a little bit, and continued with Cape Breton, and then a little bit of time in Wilkes-Barre in the American League. But he's now going to be part of 18 consecutive NHL seasons.
And this is why
worth
Dan
noting,
D'Uva
of course,
has the notes.
Right. I should point out, though, that, of course, there was no 04-05 NHL season. That's why we talk professional hockey, because the American Hockey League did play and so on and so on. So there's always that unfortunate distinction we have to make because of the missed season in 04-05. since we're looking at some big picture stuff here, Mike, I did want to get a question that was asked by one of our viewers about predictions, because this team has done a lot of scoring. We talked just a moment ago about all the scoring done early. Cody Glass, his emergence, maybe Peyton Krebs is part of this team. Of course, they no longer have Paul Stastny. Offensively, where do you think this group is? Where are there strides to make? And prediction in terms of who is going to lead the team in scoring.
Well, you look at the regular season, and the Golden Knights led the league in the number of chances for, but they couldn't produce at that same level. They were mid-pack in goal scoring. Come back from the return to play, all of a sudden, they're going gangbusters to start with. And a lot of that came from Pete DeBoer's system, his preference to move things quickly out of the zone, to let the defense lead that rush. Why is Alex Pietrangelo such an attractive player for the Vegas Golden Knights? Because he can activate the speed of the forwards. He can make that outlet pass. He has the vision to do so, to complement the other defense on the Golden Knights, to make the team that much faster. It's a very much a low to high system once in the zone, driving it through the defense. But you're going to need to see the forwards pick up some slack, Dan. You know, Max Pacioretty had an outstanding year. Riley Smith, outstanding goal-scoring year for both of them. We need more. William Karlsson wasn't quite at the same level of goal-scoring previously. You mentioned Cody Glass. And to me, Cody Glass is he is this year's X Factor. We talked about X Factor 89 last year, Alex Tuck. Mm-hmm. To me, that's Cody Glass this year. Currently skating on a line with Tuck, with Nick Waugh. That's a good fit right now. I think his vision, his awareness, that can only help someone like Alex Tuck, distribute pucks to him. It can help Nick Waugh, who's also a very heady player who sees the ice well. But I wonder if Cody Glass can't grow into that role of a top-line center. Do we see him with Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone? Can he provide those two players an even greater distribution with the puck? Yeah. That's very intriguing to me. Because as Pete DeBoer said, that you don't get many 6'2", 6'3", 215-pound centers in the league that can skate, that can move the puck, that have vision, that are hard to knock off of it. And that's been a big factor for Cody Glass this summer. Gained 15 pounds. He has that new strength. Does he have the willingness to use it? Mm-hmm. When does he use it?
Right.
And that's the bridge to cross. He crossed it in junior after his first year after his first year junior. Can he replicate that in the NHL? He's done everything he possibly can to get to that stage.
Right. He talked just the other day about the first day of camp. He was a little timid and wasn't himself. He felt more himself day two.
And he's coming off an injury.
Yeah, those things are still there.
Right.
I mean, he hasn't played a game in 11 months. He was ruled out even before the Knights got close to the return to play. He was ruled out for that. There was no hope that he was going to contribute. Even if the Golden Knights went the distance, he was not going to be part of the bubble. At least that gave him the opportunity, unlike previous summers where he would have had international competition. He's at least had the time to work on those things. He mentioned his weight is about 205, 207. And by the way, when you talk about weight being 205, 206, 207, it's still amazing to me. These guys know exactly how much they weigh, and I don't mean by stepping on a scale. Ryan Reeves has talked about knowing exactly if he's at 225, if he's at 227, at 223. Reason being, if he's a little bit light, he's going to go and have a pizza after the game. But if he's a little bit heavy, he's got to take a couple of pounds off because he's not as agile. He can feel it in his bones, in his body after a game, depending on if he's a couple of pounds heavy, a couple of pounds light, or right where he wants to be.
And you're exactly the same way, right?
Yep. You check my diet. I'm an Italian, Sicilian soundbite. That's
this man can pack down the pasta.
How could you tell?
It's actually very true. I can tell you personally, since I retired, I think I'm up 5 or 6 pounds, and to me that's like 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I've lost everything of athletic ability. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot, but it just shows you how in tune you are as an athlete to your body. Like, I can tell that fluff factor on myself very quickly.
The fluff factor.
And,
we're going to call it that now? The fluff factor.
Sure. I'm going to trademark, I believe, when we're finished with this. But it is amazing how in tune players are at this level. And think about Cody Glass when he started playing junior hockey. He's about 155 pounds. 160? That's a 50-pound swing in about 4 or 5 years.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, that's how players grow into themselves, and especially centermen. It's so hard to play center in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
He said it yesterday. He goes, it's a hard league to play in, I'll tell you that for free.
Right.
Well, yeah, man.
He's
you don't have to pay for that knowledge.
He's 21 years old right now. He'll turn 22 years old in April. He's going to be part of this team, that much is all but assured. Peyton Krebs, who was playing right wing for Team Canada, and Kelly McCrimmon indicated that's probably his third position. He's a natural center. Because of his stick, he would then be number 2 left wing, but here he is, the best Canadian hockey players. He's third line right wing, basically. Right. I wonder what role he might have here, because here's just talking about line combinations. We thought, and we talked about this on the SLGND podcast, we thought Cody Glass would be a good fit with Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone, right? That seems to make sense. But I'm not necessarily thinking that it's all about Cody Glass necessarily here. I wonder if Glass is there, who then becomes Alex Tuch's line mates? And Chandler Stevenson is the guy right now between Pacioretty and Stone. Alex Tuch with, say, Chandler Stevenson and Nick Waugh. With no disrespect to Waugh and Stevenson, from what Alex Tuch did last year in the playoffs, don't you want to give him the kind of skill players that would allow him to replicate and build upon what he did over the summer? And I'm wondering, I don't know this, it's just speculation, perhaps that's one of the reasons why Cody Glass is with Alex Tuch right now. And who knows, it could change, but I wonder if that plays into it. You want to make sure that Alex Tuch has some other skill type of players on his line.
For sure. I mean, let's be honest, the third line last year was a black hole for 2/3 of the season. You know, they were not getting production. Cody Eakin didn't have a great year at center. He couldn't get the puck to Tuch. It wasn't working. That's reality. And you need somebody skilled to do that. And I think part of this, too, like we mentioned, Glass coming off that injury, you're letting him grow into his role. Maybe you find that there's incredible chemistry with Tuch and Waugh, and you don't want to change that.
Yeah.
That's great. That gives you 3 depth lines and plenty of maneuverability. But one thing that there's a lot of competition on the Golden Knights at the centerman position right now. Chandler Stevenson can play anywhere. Swiss Army knife. Doc Holliday, I'm calling him right now with the mustache. He's playing center between Pacioretty and Stone. That's where he had his most success for the Golden Knights last season. But he can fit in anywhere. Nick Waugh can play anywhere in the lineup. Where does Peyton Krebs fit in? You know, he was ready to be injected into the lineup in the return to play.
Right, and that's the interesting part about all this. He was on the ice for warm-ups. I mean, he was very close to making his NHL debut. If a veteran player hadn't been able to go, he was the next guy up. And when he gets here, whenever that is, following the protocols, is he someone who finds himself in the lineup, maybe not the first game, but in the first week or so? And again, that's where we're talking about the center position. You've lost Paul Stastny, and that creates a hole. Now, William Karlsson has been the go-to center on this team for the first 3 seasons, but now you've got Glass, now you've got Krebs. These are those young guys coming up. The Knights have not had prospects coming up at the forward position. You've now seen Whitecloud, you've seen Haig on the blue line, but Glass and potentially Krebs, and there are some other guys in the mix too. We don't want to forget others, but we've not seen those Golden Knights draft picks crack the lineup as a forward. Glass and maybe Krebs would be the next.
And the exciting part of this is that these are the players you need to grab those roles going forward as an organization. You need your young depth to do it, and you need to have homegrown talent at the center position. Look at every team in the league that's won a Stanley Cup. They've done it with homegrown centermen and homegrown goaltending. And you know, you're getting to that phase now at the centerman position for the Golden Knights. Goaltending is going to take a little bit longer. That's a more down the road thing for the team. It's the nature of being an expansion team. But there's also depth at center. You look at Patrick Brown. He can play anywhere if you need to as well. Peyton Krebs is really someone to me that is going to be a very tough decision. Do you need him in the American League playing games when that happens? Do you want him on your taxi squad? Is he on the NHL team?
Yeah. I
think there's a very wide berth for him and where he ends up, and it's to be determined. It's a big camp for him. No question about it. But there's a bright future for him too. So for him as a player, he's just got to focus on the task at hand and not let the big picture take control of his mind. Just go play, show what you can do, know the organization believes in you and that they have a plan for you.
Wrapping things up here on our training camp bulletin presented by NextGen. Before the last couple of questions and things I want to ask you, Mike, a few more shout outs. VGK Worldwide, it's fantastic. Aberdeen, Scotland has checked in. David on YouTube.
I mentioned Scotland. There we
you
are.
Go. Checking in from outside Aberdeen, Scotland. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. Ava is with us from Brandon, Manitoba. I've never heard of Brandon, Manitoba.
You have not? My goodness. I mean, I feel like at this point we're almost all honorary citizens. We know enough about it, speaking to, not just players and management and broadcasting. We've got all the bases covered from Brandon.
No, of course, Brandon, so many connections with that great town, starting with Kelly McCrimmon down through a number of coaches and staff members and players, of course. So thank you to Ava for watching on YouTube up in Brandon, home of the Wheat Kings. And Chef on Twitch is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have no doubt there might be a Marc-Andre Fleury connection. And also Matt is in Sweden watching on Twitch. And Matt reports it is currently snowing. It is -2 Celsius. That would be, what, upper 20s?
Let's say -2. So I can go the other way. You go -30, divide by 2. So multiply by 2, -2. So you're looking at about 28 or 9.
That's upper 20s.
That's rough mathematics. Economics major, not a math major. Economics.
No, it is 8:45 p.m. there.
I can tell you about
Sweden.
demand curves.
So thank you, Matt, for watching on Twitch, and thank you for tuning in wherever you are, whatever platform you are watching. Just wrapping it up here. I mentioned this at the top of the show, the World Junior Championship concluding last night, and the gold medal to Team USA, a few Golden Knights involved in the game. But there is one Anaheim Duck player in Trevor Zegras out of BU, first-round pick of the Ducks, who had the comments before the game, scores the big goal. And I'll ask you, Mike, and this is pertaining to the Ducks, but it also ties in with the prospects and how quickly you can expect these 19, 20-year-olds to make an impact. Eric Stevens, who's a great writer for The Athletic down in Southern California, had a recent article, and the headline was, "Can Trevor Zegras play for the Anaheim Ducks now? ? Should he? ? Zegras said that yesterday was the greatest day of my life. He scores the goal and wins the gold. So I pose that question to you, Mike, if it's Zegras in particular. How about playing for an NHL team so quickly after, this experience and at that age, given everything that's going on this year, whether it's Zegras there with the Ducks, could we be seeing some guys we've never heard of before, never heard of in quotes, in the NHL in the next week or two because of everything that's gone on?
Well, if we do, it's going to throw everybody's fantasy pool right out the window. Those 18th round Flyers, I don't think many people had some of the names that were there at World Juniors. But yeah, I mean, there is that possibility. Teams, this is a sprint this year at 56 games. You need results right away. If any of these players come out of World Juniors with some momentum and have an outstanding camp, and you get an older veteran player on your team that doesn't look inspired or is tepid on the ice, you're going to be looking to youthful talent. I think there's an opportunity. I don't think it's great. I think we need to temper expectations when it comes to young talent, very much so. And remember, these are 18, 19, 20-year-old young men playing. But it's real. We've seen those examples of players that have had a great tournament. They make a name for themselves. They ride that wave of momentum. And it's just a matter if they can sustain it, though. A lot of these players at World Juniors, they're not your typical third, fourth line grinders. Yeah. They're really skilled players, and those jobs are very, very few and far between at the NHL level.
Rest assured, these topics and more will be discussed over the course of the next week and into the regular season, of course. Want to thank you for tuning in and remind you that there's a lot more of this coverage. We'll be here again for more streams. The Training Camp Bulletin brought to you by NextGen. We're not exactly sure what tomorrow looks like, so check back. If there's something to broadcast, we'll let you know on all the social media channels. There's nothing happening on Friday. It's a scheduled off day. Saturday, back to action. So you can expect a Saturday similar to the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that we've just had. And we'll start the broadcast at about 10:15-ish, so you can tune in for that. In addition to the live stream here, the Training Camp Bulletin brought to you by NextGen, you've also got that podcast we talked about with Darren Millard, the VGK Daily, and that is brought to you by Jack in the Box every day. Just subscribe, and it'll be right there on your device. It's also on SoundCloud. You can listen on the computer. VGK Daily Podcast with Darren Millard. Great. It's usually like 8, 9, 10, 11 minutes. Everything you need to know right there in that podcast. VGK Daily, brought to you by Jack in the Box. And then we didn't get to talk about this, and shame on us. The training camp diary, which is presented by Station Casinos, that's the notebook type of coverage on our website, vegasgoldenknights.com. Some really interesting stuff. It's not necessarily X's and O's. You get to know the guys. So there's that training camp diary brought to you by Station Casinos on vegasgoldenknights.com.
Yet again, we're coming at you from every angle. You got Dan D'Uva doing a masterful job on the mic over here, and man, Jack in the Box.
Thanks to all these devices. Look,
anytime I hear Jack
beverages.
in the Box, I think of those delicious tacos and the buttermilk ranch.
Oh yeah. Oh, see, now you're getting us hungry again.
See?
That means it's
we are
gotta be
approaching
time to
lunchtime.
go. Yeah, it's almost noon here. It was a little shorter session for the Golden Knights today. I'd say that the only news was that Alex Tuch was back on the ice.
And very good news.
He was not on the ice yesterday, just resting, a maintenance day. Any other news, anything else that came out of today, Mike? I think that was the only newsworthy item, and of course we'll be hearing from players and coaches in media interviews upcoming.
Well, one thing, once again, pertaining to World Juniors, I know it's been a hot topic today, but there was a friendly wager made between Shea Theodore and Alec Martinez. Of course, Alec Martinez, American, Shea Theodore, Canadian. D Partners had a friendly wager. The American team winning, Tino's got himself a free dinner. That was the wager, was that Shea Theodore would owe Alec Martinez a meal on the road. And of course, Alex said that we don't know when that may be, so it might have to be a nice room service meal at some point.
I could just hang it over him for even longer then.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you just hold him hostage for this. But I thought that was newsworthy and fun, and it showed to this is your D partner, right? This is your buddy. It's kind of like goalie partners, and just a cool thing to happen between the two guys.
A week from tomorrow, the Golden Knights season begins. Year 4. Can you believe it? It's just about time. 7 o'clock, T-Mobile Arena, Golden Knights and Anaheim Ducks, broadcast on AT&T Sportsnet and, of course, on the Vegas Golden Knights radio network. Lots more to come until then. It is training camp for another handful of days, brought to you by Martin Harris Construction. And, of course, big thanks to NextGen, presenting the training camp Bulletin. We will have those updates as far as tomorrow's stream, if there's a stream, what time it might be, as training camp forges on for the Vegas Golden Knights. Thanks to all of us. Thanks to you for tuning in. And thank you for everyone working behind the scenes, Andrew, Jenna, Gordo, and the rest of the Golden Knights staff. For Mike McKenna, Dan D'Uva saying good day.